Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a framework that really aims to change the game, to turn teaching from what feels like a mysterious art form into a powerful, predictable science. We're talking about the 12 principles of effective teaching.
So let's just jump right in with a big question. We've all had that one teacher, right? The one who changed everything for us. But why is it that their magic seems so impossible to bottle up and pass on? Is being a great teacher really just about having the right personality or, some kind of a special intuition?
Well, according to a whole lot of research, the answer is a resounding no. The core idea we're digging into today is this fundamental shift in how we think about teaching. It's about moving away from relying on gut feelings or the latest fads, and instead building our practice on methods that are actually proven to work, backed by solid scientific evidence.
And does it really make a difference? Oh yeah, the impact is absolutely staggering. When these principles are applied correctly, studies show that students can retain up to 30% more of what they learn. Think about that. That's not just a little improvement. That's a total game changer for learning.
And this is the key. These aren't just 12 random helpful hints you could find on a block. They form a complete, coherent system. It's a scientifically validated blueprint designed not only to maximize learning for every single student, but also to help level the playing field and reduce educational inequality. So here's our plan. First, we're going to cement this idea of moving from intuition to real science. Then, we'll get into what I'm calling the blueprint for learning. These are the principles for designing a killer lesson. After that, we'll talk about bringing the lesson to life, the principles for actually executing it in the classroom. And we'll wrap up by looking at your first practical scientific step.
All right, let's start with that foundation. Science, not just intuition. This is all about making that critical shift from teaching based on what we believe works to what we can prove works.
This quote from Barack Rosenshine, who is a giant in this field, just says it all perfectly. This isn't about erasing your personality as a teacher. Not at all. It's about taking that unique style you have and channeling it through a framework that we know, for a fact, gets results.
Okay, let's get into the first point of the system, the blueprint for learning. Think of this as the architectural phase. This is all the crucial design work you do before you ever set foot in the classroom.
So principle number 1 is all about managing cognitive load. The best way to think about this is that your working memory is like your computer's RAM. It is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly limited. If you try to cram too much information in there at once, or if it's presented in a really confusing way, the system just gets overloaded and learning grinds to a halt. The goal isn't to dumb things down, it's to strip away all the unnecessary distractions so the brain can focus its limited resources on the stuff that really matters.
And this idea of managing cognitive load leads us straight to the next principle, progressivity. It's just common sense, really. You would never ask a student to write a complex essay before they can even write a simple sentence. Learning has to build on itself in logical, bite-sized pieces. Just look at this example for reading. You have to start with decoding words. Then you can move to understanding what they literally mean. From there, you can start making inferences. And only then can you get to deep critical analysis. Every step is a foundation for the next.
And this next principle, alignment, shows why that structure is so critical. What you say you want students to learn, what you actually teach them, and how you test them, all three have to be perfectly in sync. Look at this misaligned example here. The goal is writing an argument, but the test is on spelling? How frustrating is that for a student? It creates total confusion because you're not even testing them on the main point of the lesson.
All right, next up, clarity. Now this one sounds so simple, but it is unbelievably powerful. Clarity is all about making sure your instructions, your expectations, and what it takes to succeed are crystal clear to everyone. When a student knows exactly what they're supposed to do and what a good job looks like, their anxiety plummets. And all that mental energy they would have spent trying to figure out the assignment can go directly into, actually doing the learning.
And the difference is just night and day. Look at this. Do a project on the environment. What does that even mean? It's so vague, it's stressful. But compare that to the clear version. You have a format, a length, a deadline, and you know exactly how you'll be graded. That's not just a better instruction, it's a more equitable one, because it makes sure every single student is aiming for the exact same target.
So, you've meticulously designed your lesson blueprint. Now for part 2, bringing the lesson to life.
This is the execution. This is where you get into the classroom and use principles that create active engagement and make sure the learning actually sticks around for the long haul.
A massive piece of this puzzle is feedback, and I absolutely love this analogy. Great feedback isn't about judging someone. It's a GPS. It's a neutral, helpful tool that just tells a learner, okay, here is exactly where you are right now. Here's the destination you're trying to get to. And here is the best route to get there.
And you can see the power of that here. The ineffective feedback, you made a lot of spelling errors, is basically useless. It's a judgment with no direction. But look at the effective feedback. It starts with a specific strength, which is awesome. Then it identifies one precise area to work on and, this is the crucial part, it gives a concrete, actionable next step. That's the kind of feedback that actually builds skills.
That kind of targeted feedback is a huge component of our next principle, scaffolding. The best way to think of scaffolding is like the training wheels on a bike. It's temporary, adjustable support that helps a learner do something they couldn't quite do on their own yet. But the goal is always to gradually remove that support until they can ride all by themselves.
And that scaffolding is what makes the next principle, deliberate practice, possible. This is the roadmap to true independence. You can see the journey here. It starts with the teacher modeling the skill. Then you move into guided practice with a ton of that GPS-style feedback. From there, maybe they practice together in small groups. And finally, they're ready to apply the skill all on their own. It's a clear, structured path from I do to we do to you.
And finally, how do you make sure all this hard work doesn't just disappear? That's where the principle of spaced repetition comes in. Let's be honest, our brains are forgetting machines. That's their default setting. Without reviewing, we lose most new information pretty quickly. But we can hack this system by strategically revisiting information at increasing intervals, like after a day, then a week, then a month. We send a powerful signal to our brain, hey, this stuff is important, save it. And that's what locks it into long-term memory.
So we've walked through the blueprint for design and the principles for execution. Now let's bring it all home with your first scientific step. It is so important to remember that these aren't just 12 separate items on a checklist. They all work together. They're an interconnected, synergistic system. In fact, you can think of the 12 principles as belonging to 4 complementary families. First, you have cognitive structuring. That's things like managing cognitive load and ensuring progressivity. It's all about the design. Then you have didactic clarity, making sure everything from the instructions to the goals is understood. Next is active engagement, using tools like feedback and scaffolding to get the learner doing the work. And finally, knowledge consolidation, using strategies like spaced repetition to make the learning last. Each group of principles makes the others even stronger.
And that brings us to the end. The goal here isn't to try and implement all 12 of these principles by tomorrow morning. I mean, that would cause some serious cognitive overload, right? Instead, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Based on everything we've just talked about, which single principle could you focus on tomorrow to make learning just a little bit more scientific and a whole lot more effective?